Morning, everyone. GM Dave here, your man behind the screen, with another rambling, roaming vlog as I continue driving around and about on an average work day. I like doing these vlogs in the morning when I'm working. Nice way to occupy my time that would otherwise just be wasted roaming YouTube trying to find something worth listening to. So, I saw a post on Facebook this morning, and actually I think a couple of the Pathfinder groups I'm in shared this, and it was from a page called Ask a Pathfinder. Really worthwhile page to check out, because a lot of the stuff he talks about is not exclusive to Pathfinder. It's stuff that can be applied to any tabletop game, and this is one of them. He was giving advice on how to handle defeat of your players, and in this case, defeat does not mean death. Defeat is not synonymous with party death or a TPK, a character death. That's something that a lot of players and a lot of GMs tend to think, that, oh, you know, if you're defeating the players, well, that means one of them has to die. That's not true. That's not true. Just the same as the players don't have to kill a certain enemy to defeat them. You can rout them, you can capture them, so on and so forth. You don't have to kill your players to defeat them. You can rout them, you can capture them, you can kill someone they care about that they were trying to protect. Things like that. There are many ways that you can defeat your players. Now, the Ask a Pathfinder page makes a note in the page that, oh, nobody likes defeat in tabletop RPGs. Nobody likes that feeling of defeat. I would argue, honestly, that's not true. I have found that actually among not just my friends and my gaming groups, but outside gaming groups who I've talked about this with, that there's a lot of players out there who actually really do, if not in the moment, after the fact, really do enjoy exploring that concept of defeat. They like to be beaten. I mean, not necessarily like to be beaten, but defeat in and of itself is not an unfun, unenjoyable thing, because it leaves the players with a lot of options to explore. There's quite a bit of different things you can explore with a defeated party. There's a whole emotional spectrum that those players can now have their characters experience and explore. It acts with a good group anyway, it can act as a learning experience for both the players and the characters. There's a lot of great things that come from it, so I'm fully a proponent of defeat without death. That's something that I think a lot more people need to practice in their tabletop games, personally. But, excuse me, the main need of the post was really going into just a small handful of ways that you can defeat your players without killing them, and how you can help the players and the player characters bounce back from that. And I wanted to kind of touch on a few of his points, a few of the Ask a Pathfinder page's points, because I think they were very well made. I think it is worth looking into these and kind of disseminating them a little bit. So, the first key point was, like I said, defeat, not death, more or less. Do forgive me. I guarantee you, I'm not going to get the exact wording of the posts of the points right. I'm going to be paraphrasing. Sorry about that. I'm going to be paraphrasing just to keep things simple. So that first point, like we mentioned, is defeat, not death. Not every party defeat, not every PC defeat has to come with the PCs dying. And the key point was the idea of live to fight another day. And that's something that I think a lot of gaming groups tend to forget as an option. They look at a fight, they get into that almost, I call it the video game mindset of, no, I have to kill this guy. That's the only way I can beat them. I have to kill them. The thought to press R1 and L1 to run away in the Final Fantasy battle doesn't come up as frequently as you might think. No. The thought is, I gotta kill them. I gotta win. I gotta win. Guts and glory. Gung-ho. Kill it, kill it, kill it. Win, win, win. Well, there are little tricks that GMs and experienced players, too, can do to sort of curb this mentality. After all, yeah, it's perfectly fine, and oftentimes it's a lot of fun to go gung-ho, guts and glory, gonna kill it, gonna win it. That could be a lot of fun. But the thing to bear in mind, too, is that the character you're playing, yeah, they're not real, but you are, in a sense, trying to simulate as though they are real in this game. That's kind of where the role-playing side comes in. You're fighting not just to win, but to survive. So, if you're in the middle of a fight, in the middle of a campaign, you've got this big overarching goal. Let's say you're trying to prevent someone from raising a dragon from the dead that's going to destroy the kingdom of Bulmeria. I don't know. Just some shit I'm making up off the top of my head. Yeah, let's say that the evil wizard is trying to raise the dragon Narlathex to destroy the kingdom of Bulmeria for him. And he's enlisted all sorts of goblin brigands and hobgoblin generals and the lizard men from the bleak swamps and so on and so forth. Your party's getting a fight with some of his stronger minions, and they start to lose. They start getting their asses handed to them. But they insist on continuing to fight. Well, in the game sense, you know, that's fair. That's a perfectly fine, fair choice. Maybe these people are the type of people who are going to fight and die before they give up and run away. But most people, the majority of people, even the kind of people who do put their lives on the line, are not like that. If they are going to fight and die, they're doing so to specifically try and protect someone nearby, usually. In all other cases, flight, live to fight another day, is a perfectly viable and probably a more sensible option. So how can you get your players to kind of see this? Well, like the post suggests, a couple easy ways is to suggest to maybe the party cleric or someone who is savvy to it that they make a heal or a medicine check to sort of observe the general state of the rest of the party compared to the state of your enemies that you're fighting. You can also make sense motive checks to see, or insight checks if that's the appropriate skill, to see, you know, what's the prevailing sense of these enemies. Like, how's their morale compared to ours? You know, we're getting our asses kicked. These guys are barely scratched. They're bearing down on us. They're probably going to kill us. You know, you can make will saves, things like that, to try and show the players, like, yeah, you know, fear is starting to set in. You know, if you keep doing this, you're probably going to die. So there's little things you can do using the mechanical side of things to drop those hints to your players of, hey, you should probably run away now so that you can come back, fight these guys later, and hopefully not die today so that you can actually fulfill your overarching mission and stop this wizard from raising the dragon. So that's one way you can do things. You can also approach it from the roleplay side of things and just sort of drop little narrative descriptions to show that your party is withering. Your party is failing in the face of these dangerous enemies, but these enemies are, at least in comparison, barely hurt. You might have dropped one of them. Let's say it's a 4-on-4 fight, and your party manages to drop one of these four mercenaries or whoever it is that's attacking them. So this guy's dead. His friends are pissed. They're rallying. They're fighting even harder now because you killed one of them. You guys were already struggling to begin with. By the time you killed this guy, everyone in your party was half health. you've killed one of their 4, but you haven't touched the other 3. That's a situation in which you could start dropping those hints to show that, oh yeah, these guys are rallying now. You killed their friend, they're rallying, they're fighting even harder now. You know, like as you swing your sword, you know, your breath heavy with the difficulty of this fight, and yet these men you're fighting seem almost unfazed. In fact, they seem to be fighting even more fiercely since their friend died. Descriptions like that can drop pretty decently clear hints to your players that, hey, you're fighting a losing battle here. It's time to either retreat or change your strategy so that you don't end up dead. So, you know, it gives them basically that small reminder that they have other options than just standing and fighting. So, moving on from there, let's say that now the players were defeated, they ran away or were captured, so on and so forth. The next thing that they're going to encounter as a party, and maybe not necessarily as the party, but at the very least as characters, is going to be a trough in their morale. There's going to be a dip in the party morale. They're going to feel defeated. They're going to feel dejected. They're going to feel like they failed. And that's okay. You know, those, like I mentioned in the beginning, those feelings are actually really fun, interesting feelings to explore. And oftentimes exploring what happens after a defeat or a soured victory, but generally even more so with a defeat, those lead to some of the most memorable character moments in your games. So it is well worth setting up some of these moments, but it is important to be careful that you're not setting up too many. If you set up too many of them, the players are going to start to feel like you are against them, like you are being openly and willingly antagonistic towards them, like you're actively trying to see to it that they lose. And you don't want to do that. Your goal is not to force them to lose. Your goal is to provide an exciting, dramatic, memorable experience. Sometimes that means losing, but it shouldn't mean that all the time. And if it is meaning that all the time, if you are constantly putting your players in situations where they're fighting losing battles, eventually the players themselves are going to feel like you are against them, like you are actively trying to prevent them from succeeding, and they're going to not want to play anymore. Their desire to play the game, their enjoyment of the game is going to suffer. So you have to use a careful hand and make sure that you're not pushing too hard on this. Now that being said, in terms of the in-character and player morale immediately after the defeat, you want to give them time to explore this, but you also want to make sure that they have the ability to come back from it. And there's a couple ways that you can do this. The post suggests, I'm just going to go with what the post suggests for right now. I'll explore this topic in greater detail at a later time. Right now, I just kind of want to go over what this post mentioned because I feel it's really good. This is really good advice here for any tabletop role-playing game. So, one thing that you can do to sort of boost the morale back up, start the climb back up to good, stable morale, both as the player characters and with the players themselves, is to either hint to one of them, probably one of the more experienced players, or if there's a character that's more appropriate for, as the DM, if they haven't already done this, hint to them that there's the possibility there that these guys, there could be a rivalry developing here, or a chance at revenge developing here. Use the defeat as a motivator to get them moving forward again. Don't just let them wallow in it. So that's one pretty simple way that you can inspire your players to move forward, to keep playing, and to actually continue the fight, so to speak, is to make sure that they are motivated to actually do so. Damn, I actually took a wrong turn here. No big deal. From there, we move on to part 3, which is bringing them shortly afterwards a moment of catharsis. Now, I'm going to actually open with the latter half of this point because I feel that the latter half is something that's very important to address immediately. There is an issue here with this being a bit of a double-edged sword. The idea of catharsis, a catharsis fight, a catharsis encounter. And that double-edged sword can be that if you're not careful about how it's handled, or if you find yourself doing this too frequently, you can rapidly find that your party is going to devolve into a bunch of murder hobos. Because they're going to get so much joy from these simpler fights, so much pleasure from having a moment where they won, that pretty soon all they're going to do is start looking for more easy fights. Now, this is by no means a guaranteed thing to happen, but it is something to bear in mind. This is yet another reason why you want to use a careful, gentle hand with these sorts of things, why you want to make sure that you're not having these defeatist moments happen too frequently, so that you're not having to have catharsis moments happen too frequently, so that the in-character integrity of the party can be preserved, and these, what I would hope were originally interesting, fun characters to play as, don't just devolve into a bunch of murder hobos. Now, if murder hobo-y is what your party wants to do, it's fine. Yeah, you do you have fun your way. But running on the assumption that murder hoboing is not what you want to do, you got to use a careful hand and make sure that you're not giving too many catharsis moments, and that you're still keeping the challenge decent, the roleplay strong, and that the integrity of your game is preserved. But providing those catharsis moments immediately after, or at least very shortly after a defeat like that, is a great way to get the players feeling like they're powerful again, like they can defeat enemies again. Now, you obviously don't want to make the fights too easy. There needs to be some level of challenge there that makes the players feel like, okay, yeah, I can still fight enemies that are decently tough and overcome them, like I can still do this. But you do want to still ensure that this is a fight that they are probably, let's say, 85% likely to win. So you're going to want to make sure that you tool the fight properly so that the chances are most likely that they win, but that there is still that element of danger there. And if you do this, then the players are going to feel like they accomplished this themselves. You want to make sure that it's not painfully obvious that, we're fighting a bunch of easy enemies. And sometimes the dice are going to work against you on that. That's kind of inevitable. There are going to be situations where the dice just will not work for you when you're trying to make these catharsis moments. You're just going to kind of have to try and roll with the punches there. But assuming that the dice are generally working in yours and the player's favor, building those catharsis moments, if you can make it so that this fight is easy with an 85 to 90% guaranteed success rate for the players, with just enough challenge to make them feel like they accomplished this, like this wasn't a fight that you intentionally made easy, that is going to be the perfect way to bring their morale back up from that defeat and make the players and the PCs remember, we are still capable, we can still do this. This was one defeat, we're not going to let them beat us. And then from there, finally, we move into the last bit, which is moving forward. Once you've had that defeatist moment and you've brought the characters up with that bit of catharsis, now it's time for the characters to move forward and to learn from that, to improve on where they were before, both as players and as characters. You can't really get those moments where the players and the characters alike have that opportunity to improve without a defeat here and there. If all they're earning is victory after victory after victory, yes, they're still going to learn some things, especially if they're new players. They're still going to learn some things. There's still going to be improvement. That's still going to happen. But it's going to be a lot slower. The moments of defeat, the moments where we make mistakes, the moments where things go wrong, are the moments where we have the best chance of learning. As one of my favorite singers, William Elliott Whitmore, says in one of his songs, "Hard times made us." Well, that's just as true for the player characters in our games as it is for us in real life. It's the difficult times, the defeats, the down moments, and how those characters overcome them and pull themselves out of them that make them not only interesting characters, but memorable characters and deeper, richer characters. So defeatist moments, don't shy away from them. And remember that defeat does not always mean death. However, while I do say don't shy away from them, do be careful that you don't include too many as well. As useful and fun and memorable as these can be when handled properly, if you use too many, you are going to kill your players' enthusiasm. So use it sparingly, but don't be afraid to use it. That's about all I've got for you today, friends and gamers. I hope you found this little topic to be interesting. I will see if I can actually post a link to this original post in the description of the video. I don't know if I'm going to actually be able to do that, but I will try. If I can't get that to work, then I will, at the very least, copy over the post into a comment onto the page so that you guys can read it for yourselves. I have a feeling I might have actually gotten the last point wrong, but nevertheless, I think the point overall has been made. What are your thoughts on defeats in combat? Defeats not necessarily involving player death. Do you find them to be useful? Do you find that they can create fun memories? Or are you just completely against them? What's your opinion? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to carry on a discussion about this topic, and do expect a further video going into this a little bit deeper, exploring other ways that you can make this work. If you liked the video, please feel free to leave a like and a comment. If you want to see more of my content, feel free to consider subscribing and hitting that bell notification button. It doesn't always work, but sometimes it does. However, if you want consistent updates from me, make sure that you follow me on social media. I have a Minds and a Facebook account currently. Come the end of the week, I will also be on Twitter and Gab. Do note that outside of Facebook and occasionally Minds, which really not many people follow me on Minds, so there hasn't been occasion for this yet, I am not going to be interacting much with Gab and Twitter. Really, all I'm going to be doing there is posting updates. Mainly just because I don't like either of those things. So, with all that said and done, friends and gamers, it is my sincere hope, as always, that you continue to roll high, role play well, and game on. I will see you a bit later today with another video on something. I haven't decided yet, but we'll figure it out. Take care.